Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. The path that led me to deciding to run for City Council started a long time ago when my family experienced the trauma of displacement. Immediately following the loss of rent control in 1995, Cambridge saw housing costs skyrocket as developers scrambled to realize the new opportunities for profit unleashed by our deregulated housing market. While this change benefited some, as renters, my family was among the many people that paid a very harsh price that came along with this change. Our home of over 30 years, or just about 30 years, was sold to a private developer who saw the building we lived in a very different way than we did. When we looked at the red brick building at 6 Porter Road, we saw our home, a place where we found security and shelter, a place where we offered hospitality to our friends and family, a place me and my brother grew up and learned to listen to and play music. The developer that bought our building, however, did not see a family's home. They saw an underperforming asset. And so we were forced to leave our home so that the developer could exercise their right to maximize their profits. I know that some of you in this room right now understand the feeling firsthand, but if you have not, it's very difficult to communicate the profound trauma of displacement. In our case, we did not only lose our home. My father lost his job. And because rents had risen so much already in only 4 years since rent decontrol, we were uprooted from our community as well, and we resettled in the Midwest. I moved back here as an adult in 2004 to find a very different city. And since then, Cambridge has been getting harder and harder to recognize when I compare it to the place I grew up in. I remember a place where families like my own lived in apartments, but I returned to a place where even the cheapest apartments are only affordable when young working adults live in them together and combine their incomes. I remember children playing in the streets, and I returned to a city where elementary schools were closing. I remember a city where every imaginable type of store and restaurant, but I returned to one where increasingly the only businesses that can survive more than a few years are high-end restaurants and banks. We live in a city that prides itself as progressive. And yet our local economic and political structures seem to imply the following basic value. Cambridge, as it works today, would rather protect the right of already insanely wealthy individuals and institutions to make even more money than protecting the right of people who have so much less to just remain in their community. But as bleak as this all may seem, I don't think for a minute that this is inevitable. Countless times in history, laws that purported to protect the common good have been shown to merely protect the interest of a small section of the population and were changed to be more equitable based on that understanding. The laws that enable our hyper-commodified housing and retail system fit this model to a T. The first step to changing these laws is recognizing the obvious truth. They are not set up for the common good, but to help a wealthy and powerful few gain even more wealth and power at the expense of the many. We need to vocally call out the injustice of this arrangement to make sure the city hears us. Next, we need to vote out everyone in City Hall who takes money from this sociopathic 1%. Yeah! The developer lobby. Besides myself, there are many other challengers who have pledged not to take a penny from the developer lobby. Charles Franklin, Jeevan Sorbino Wheeler, and Nicole Williams, who are all here or were here at some point. They are among them. If we can elect a city council where a majority is not beholden to developer cash, we would instantly be on a much better path. Lastly, and most importantly, we need to recognize the lesson history, American and world history, has taught us. It's not enough to just vote someone into office and go home until the next election. We need to build a movement in Cambridge for housing justice. It may seem like I'm overly focused on housing and the social costs of rampant luxury development, so let me say a few words about that. I meant to have the book on me, but I've got my backpack buried away somewhere. So there's a book called In Defense of Housing, and I think everyone in this room, probably everyone in the world, should read it. I would say it's the most important book right now, at least the most important book on the housing struggle and housing justice. It makes a case for how broken our housing system is and about how wrong it is that our housing system revolves around profit, not human need. But it also makes a case that housing struggle, more than any form of struggle right now, has the potential to truly transform our society. And I believe that. Through housing struggle, so many other things will come. Disempowering like the developer lobby in this local community that benefits so much from the system the way it works. So many other forms of justice besides housing justice are going to flow from that. Environmental justice. Developers love ignoring environmental regulations and fighting them tooth and nail. They actually brag about it. Developers have bragged about fighting against wage theft laws. We have so many people in our community that stay in abusive relationships because they're housing insecure. We have people living on the streets who are exposed to violence from other people and the police because they don't have a place to live. Housing is central to basic human life, and almost every form of justice is connected to recognizing that as a basic human right. So when we win the housing struggle, we win so much more than just housing. We win so many other forms of social justice, and I hope that you can all join me in forming that movement right here in Cambridge. Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to say, I know it's already been touched on by Mike and by Sophia really well, but I did want to say a couple things about the EMF situation, the EMF struggle. Thanks so much. I see a lot of people here in the room who were part of that fight, so thank you guys for coming. This gentleman, John P. DiGiovanni, local celebrity, beloved philanthropist, he bought our building and he told us all to get out. And it was upsetting. Obviously, it was dealing a devastating blow to the local arts community. But the experience of that was not like the experience when my family got displaced in 1999. Because what was different was that we got together and we said, hell no. We're going to fight this. And we're not in the building. I mean, I have no illusions about that. But what we did was incredible. We got the city to squirm and make it seem like, oh, we need to appease you. We need to make sure you know that we're fighting for you. In the end of the day, it was a complete lie because the majority of them are taking money from developers, if not the very same guy that was kicking us out of that building. But we really got to understand how much power comes through organizing. The people, the 1%, have a lot more money, but they do not have numbers. We are the sheer majority, and we can take power if we stick together and organize. DiGiovanni eventually, he ignored our calls to meet, but he eventually did agree to meet with us after we had been forced out of the building. And we met with him at Charlie's Kitchen, Harvard Square. Sophia and myself were there, as were John Glancy and Steve Onderick. We sat across the table from him, right there in Harvard Square, and he defended what he was doing. He said everybody other than him was at fault. The city, the previous landlord, the fire inspectors, us, the tenants. But what he was doing was completely acceptable, of course. And he said something in response to what I said that really struck me. He said, in opposition to what I was saying, that an individual has no right to remain in the community. Now, that is a really ugly thing to have said outright, but when it comes to the law, he's exactly right. That is how our law functions. That is how our economy functions. An individual, if they are not a wealthy homeowner, they have no right to remain in the community. And I said to him, well, you know what? That may be how the law functions, but oftentimes the law protects the powerful at the expense of the weak. And I said, he didn't really have a reply to that, but he said, well, if you really believe that, you can run for office or something. Well, maybe I will. Maybe I just will. John DiGiovanni. I'd like to say one last thing. Nicola Williams, who's also running, she's based in Harvard Square, and John DiGiovanni was cutting down a tree in Harvard Square. And she grabbed some blossoms from that tree, and they're the blossoms you see right here on this table. So I'd like to think that that's a campaign contribution right from John DiGiovanni. So thank you, Mr. John DiGiovanni, for supporting our campaign to get people like you to have less power. Let's put it that way. All right, I think I have one closing statement. Sorry for taking so long here. There we go. Write this thing right here. So, I believe in my campaign not because of me, but because I know what we're fighting for is what so many people in Cambridge care about and see lacking in our current political leaders. I have complete confidence that if we knock on enough doors, we will win. That's why it's so important that we are able to get volunteers to do this and hire the staff to run a terrific volunteer-powered canvassing team. So please, volunteer your time and become part of this movement. Please, if you can, donate what you can, even if it's $27.20 or even just $5. Lots of small donations can add up to a lot when you are the majority, and we are. When the developer lobby hears what we're doing, they will dump thousands upon thousands of dollars into our opponents' campaigns, which they already pretty much do, but they're gonna dump even more. But if we can raise even a fraction of what they do, we will still win. Because our vision is a vision that will change Cambridge in a way that people who live here, I believe the majority, actually want to see. So please join me in forming that movement and fighting for a better Cambridge. Oh, not a better Cambridge, sorry, I don't want to say that. I'm winging it here. Okay, fighting for...
Except actually better.
Yes, perhaps an actually a better Cambridge would be a bit of that. I was going to say this, and I didn't want to end on a joke. Let's fight to make Cambridge a people's republic again. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Stick around, have a drink, chat, and have some more of these delicious, delicious snacks.
Yes.